is up, Iron Crew? Welcome back to another episode of the Iron Crew podcast. I am your host, Danny. Thank you for joining me. In this episode, I'm talking all about how to use body weight exercises to build size, explosive power, and strength. It might be hard to believe because we've been trained to think that the only way to build size and strength is to use weight resistance exercises. And although that is the best way, that hands down is the best way to do it. Nothing tops doing back squats, deadlifts, power cleans, presses, bench presses, bent over rows. But we pigeonhole ourselves into thinking that we can't do it unless we have access to those machines and that pieces of equipment. But what I'm here to tell you is that with intelligent programming and some form of a plan going in, you can build size, you can build strength, and you can build explosive power. So I'm super pumped to break this down for you. And I've got essentially like a little program that I've written out for you guys. So if you wanted to archive this one or stop and get out a pen and paper or just kind of come back to this whenever you do have a chance to get a pen and paper, what I'm going to outline for you is a phased exercise program starting with size, then moving into strength, then incorporating some explosive power type movements. And again, the only thing that you need for this is your own body. So before I get into that, though, I want to make sure that you guys are all subscribed to this podcast. If you haven't already done so, please take a quick second to subscribe. Leave a quick rating and a review. That takes 30 seconds tops. If you want to go the extra mile, which I encourage you all to do, nothing helps this podcast grow quite like word of mouth. Do one of two things. If you have social media, take a screenshot of this podcast, put it up on your story, put it up on your feed, or hit the share button wherever you're listening to this on, and then send it via text message to a loved one, somebody who might need some help with their fitness journey, somebody who maybe needs a little bit more Danny in their life, okay? Nothing helps this podcast grow quite like that word of mouth. So I would love you forever if you did so, and I thank you in advance. All right, so going back to the body weight exercises, you might be asking yourself, like, how does one actually build size, strength, and explosive power? Well, going to the size part, you need to think about hypertrophy. You need to think about doing something that is going to make your muscles grow. And there's nothing quite like making your muscles that works quite like making your muscles grow, quite like doing high repetition and volume. Believe it or not, humans respond best to volume. Now, if you are on anabolic steroids, or if you have some great genetics that build muscle naturally, or if you are trying to get from point A to point B, meaning grow your muscles as fast as humanly possible, then yes, weight training exercises are going to be your best option. And again, I'm not denying that a weight training program is going to supersede this program, but sometimes we got to make do with what we have. So the way that you would do this with body weight exercises is you would pick exercises that you can do 12 to 20 reps of, if not more. This is going to elicit a response from your body that is going to make it adapt by growing the muscles. Higher volume tends to bode well for those individuals who are trying to get bigger muscles. And then when it comes to strength and body weight exercises, you want to think about exercises that fall somewhere in the 6 to 12 rep ranges. Now, I specifically outline these rep ranges so that you can start thinking about exercises that you can do that many reps of. So, for example, if I am going to be doing knee push-ups, I don't want to be doing that for my strength session because I could do way more knee push-ups than I can the 6 to 12 rep range. I could probably do 20, 30 of those. So I'm going to reserve that for the size phase of this program. And then the final way that you are going to utilize your body weight movements is using explosive movements. These are plyometric drills. These are jumping drills. These are exercises that require you to use explosive strength. These are, your clapping push-ups. These are your jumping air squats, your ice skater jumps. These are really, really aggressive, using fast twitch muscle fibers and performed for speed and explosivity and power. These are going to help you develop athletic ability, jumping power, running power, sprinting power, so that you can perform better. And the interesting thing about this is you need to do one before you do the other. You can't just jump right into an explosive training program without risking injury. So I emphasize the phased exercise program simply because they're building blocks. The size starts, the higher volume with the size should be the first thing that you do. Once you've built that foundation, you put on top of it the strength. And then once you've got that size and that strength, now you can start introducing more complex exercises like the explosive stuff to build that athletic ability. So starting back with the size and the high volume is the 12 to 20 rep range. So I'm going to break these down, each one of these into 4 different types of exercises. We're talking something for the pressing, upper body pressing. We're also talking about your lower body. We're talking about your core, and we're talking about your posterior chain, like your glutes, hamstrings, lower back. So the first exercise when it comes to that 12 to 20 rep range is going to be some sort of a pressing movement, like knee push-ups, regular push-ups. If you are in a deconditioned state or maybe you're obese, I would recommend doing chair push-ups or bench push-ups. These are movements that your target is to target the chest, the shoulders, and the triceps, and you're trying to get in that 12 to 20 rep range. My recommendation is to start off with 5 sets of one movement. So if you choose knee push-ups, then you would do 5 sets of 12 to 20 reps of knee push-ups. Ideally, because it's body weight, you want to be resting anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. That's going to help your body adapt in a way that's going to build stamina and also build some size on top of it. Now moving on to your lower half, we're going to be doing some really basic calisthenics like air squats and lunges. So when it comes to the air squats, you want to make sure that you're going all the way down, making sure that your crease of your hip is going at or below your knee. Full range of motion is paramount when it comes to body weight exercise because remember, you don't have load. You don't have any weights. You don't have the luxury of being able to load these exercises, so you want to make sure that you're maximizing the range of motion here. It's also just a good habit to be in when it comes to exercise in general. Like when you're doing your push-ups, make sure that you're going full range of motion, chest all the way to the ground, ass to grass if you can, or at least at the knee level, so crease of the hip at the knee or below. It's just good mechanics, good habit to be in. It's going to increase that range of motion so that when you go out and live a healthy life, things aren't as restrictive to you as you're going about your day. So air squats, full range of motion, 12 to 20 reps. Again, 5 sets or so with about 30 to 60 seconds rest. Or one of my favorites is unilateral work. So when it comes to the lower half, nothing quite works your legs like lunges. You can do these step forward lunges, step backward lunges. If you wanted to do like Cossack squats or side lunges, feel free to do those. That requires a little bit more advanced hip mobility, so be careful on that one. But I would definitely recommend changing it up and doing 12 to 20 reps on each side. So if you're doing step forward lunges, I would recommend doing all of the reps on one side before doing all of the reps on the other side. Now, sidebar on unilateral work, even if you're doing upper body stuff, even if you're doing lower body stuff, and this also applies to what I'm about to tell you, also applies to your weight training program. If you are doing unilateral work, start on the perceived weaker side. So, for example, if you're doing the lunges with weights or even with the body weights for this example, you want to start with that weak side. So if you have your left side is a lot more weak than the other, do the first set on that weak side while you're fresh and you can focus on good form and technique so that you can help bring that lagging body part up so that it can eventually be as strong as the other side. And then when you're already fatigued a little bit by doing the exercise on that one side, then you can go to the stronger side. So I'd recommend doing step forward or step back lunges for most people during this part of the program. Next up is your basic sit-up and crunches. Reason why I chose these is because it's easy to implement, you don't need any equipment, and it's more of a beginner exercise that everybody can do. And even if you're not a beginner, it's just something that you could do 12 to 20 reps of. 5 sets, 12 to 20 reps of sit-ups and or crunches. Now, when it comes to full-on sit-ups, should you do these with your feet anchored underneath an immovable object or some dumbbells, or should you do them without an anchor? That's totally up to you. I personally prefer to do my full sit-ups with an anchor. And the reason being is because it gets the hip flexors involved a lot more than if you didn't have your feet underneath an object. Moving on, finally, is the glute bridge up or glute bridge holds. I would prefer your glute bridge ups on these ones because you're going to get more repetitions in this. It's going to be more of a repetitive movement. So you're going to be able to develop a little bit more size and strength in that area of the glutes and hamstrings, more so than if you were doing a static hold. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're doing these as a static hold. However, you are going to be building more size and more definition by doing more repetitions. So glute bridge up, a fantastic exercise that's great for, posterior chain strength and overall hip mobility and overall lower back pain management. Okay, so now that we've gone over that first baseline layer of developing some size with high volume, you've now laid the foundation. I would recommend doing that 3 to 4 times a week, followed, or I should say, for about a month. I would say about 4 weeks or so. Do that 3 to 4 times a week, depending on your capacity. If you're an advanced athlete, you could probably get away with 5 days or 6 days even a week based on this program. And then moving on to your strength phase. These are your exercises that you can do in moderate volume. We're talking 8 to 12 reps, or I should say 6 to 12 reps would be ideal for most people. And breaking it up into different body parts like I did in the previous phase. Now, you should be picking exercises that you can do 6 to 12 reps if these exercises that I explained to you are things that you can do more of, or you can only do a few, or if you do less of, then you want to reserve these exercises for a different phase of this program. So the first body part is going to be that chest, shoulders, and triceps. The way that you would add load or resistance to that area and make it more challenging to develop some strength is by creating a deficit for your push-up. So how do you create a deficit on your push-up? You hold dumbbells in your hand and you place your hands to your push-up position, and then as you do your push-up, now you've created this elevated platform so that your chest can go right in between your hands and go a couple of inches lower than it normally would. This is how you get extra range of motion. Whenever you get extra range of motion, you are working your muscles in a larger, fat or a greater way because you're going through full range of motion and it's taxing the muscles in a different way. Other ways that you can do this is by creating an elevation. So you can do these decline push-ups. So now you are holding a plank and now get your feet elevated. I would recommend starting with about 6 inches and then working your way up from there. And this is just kind of changing the angle of your push-up. It also allows you to create more resistance, quote unquote, more resistance using leverage of your body. Because the rest of your body is leveraged a little bit higher, it's going to be placing more of your body weight onto your hands, onto your shoulders, triceps, and chest. So now when you go down to do a push-up, not only is it changing the angle, but it's also creating more resistance because more of your body weight is getting involved in the resistance. So that's what I would recommend when it comes to your pressing movements is deficit or decline. Now moving forward to your legs, I would recommend doing Bulgarian split squats. So your Bulgarian split squats, this is where you I guess you kind of technically need a piece of equipment. It's not just body weight, but most of us have like a bench or a chair or an elevated surface lying around. What you're doing here is you're doing a lunge, or I should say a split squat, except now that trail leg foot is elevated anywhere between 6 to 18 inches. When that foot is elevated like that, it places a tremendous amount of load on that lead leg, so it makes it much more difficult. This is one of my favorite exercises to develop strength in the glutes and the quads, and even improve hip flexor strength and stability, because that trail leg hip flexor starts to get stretched out, and you have to really stabilize that area. Bulgarian split squats. Then step-ups. Now, if you don't have weight, obviously this is a body weight only situation, I would recommend doing step-ups as well for your lower half, and doing these with tempo. Because unless you're a beginner, you could probably just do these without a tempo. But if you're more of an advanced athlete, you're going to need to add some sort of tempo in order to make this challenging enough to stay within that 6 to 12 rep range. Now, how do you add tempo on a step up? So when you go to step up, you explode all the way up, you pause for 1 second at the top, and then you slowly come down 1001, 1002, 1003. In order to get that done, it takes a tremendous amount of strength and control and stability in that lead leg that's taking taking all the brunt of the weight, and it really helps develop that strength in that area. Excuse me. So moving on to the core. So how do you add a little bit of intensity to your core training when it comes to your body weight exercises? Tuck-ups and dead bugs are easily my favorite. Reason being is because you can add tempo to these as well, which makes them more difficult. So your tuck-up is a fantastic way to work the core, work the hip flexors in a challenging enough way to develop some strength, and also incorporate a little bit of dynamic aspect to your core training. Now, dead bugs is one of those things where a lot of people stay away from them because it takes a little bit of a coordinated effort. Now, you could just do a quick little YouTube video search on the dead bugs, but essentially one way to think about it is when you're doing your dead bugs, I would recommend imagining a string that's attached from your wrist to your knee, and just understand that those two limbs need to be moving as if there's a string attached to them. That way you're constantly moving in the efficient way, and also the way that the dead bug was intended to, because a lot of people, they use like the opposite arm, opposite leg, and it just all kind of goes to crap when you're doing your dead bugs. But tuck-ups and dead bugs, 6 to 12 reps, I would recommend anywhere between 3 to 5 sets to start off with, and then work your way up from there. Moving on to the posterior chain with the strength in mind, moderate volume would be a one-leg glute bridge up. Highly recommend that unilateral aspect to most people's training at some point in their training. But when you're trying to add difficulty and you don't have much weight, or you don't have any weight, and all you're doing is body weight only exercises, you have to do what you have to do in order to make resistance training to develop that strength in the area. One way to do this is through unilateral training. One leg glute bridge ups are easily one of my favorite ways to do this. Now, if the traditional way where you have your foot on the ground is too easy, one way to make this more difficult is by using an elevated surface. So put your foot up onto a step or a bench or a chair and use that elevated surface, because you're going to get more range of motion. It's going to put more weight on that one area, and it's going to help add some strength into your program. Okay, finally, last but definitely not least, this is the exciting part. This is what you all came for. This is why you probably took the last couple of months doing these size exercises in that 12 to 20 rep range, then going on to strength into that 6 to 12 rep range. And now, oh, by the way, in the strength phase also is about a month too. You want to stay in that for about 4 weeks. The explosive part is also a 4-week phase, where it's a little bit more lower volume. This is to be done for maximum explosion, maximum power output. We're talking, think of it like a 1 rep max every time you do one of these. You are aiming for 3 to 6 reps each and every set. Now, you're probably not going to be gassed or winded when you're doing this, But what you're really going for is trying to be as explosive as possible. So the first one is the plyometric push-up or the clapping push-up. So you do a push-up and you press off the ground so hard that your hands get off of the ground, and if you can, clap. So you do a push-up and then clap. By definition, if you're able to clap, you're doing a plyometric push-up. You don't have to clap if you are in fear that you are going to, twist your hand or your wrist or something like that by clapping, then don't do it. But a good way to ensure that you are getting explosive power is to try to clap. Another way to do this, now this isn't necessarily an explosive exercise, but it's a very challenging exercise that if you're in an advanced phase of your athletic career, or you are trying to get, a little bit stronger in the upper body and add a little bit more challenge, is a handstand push-up. I highly recommend handstand push-ups. Now, this technically doesn't fall under the explosive category, but man, anybody who's ever done handstand push-ups know how hard it is and how much strength and size it can develop in the upper body. So I would highly recommend doing strict handstand push-ups, not the kipping stuff, but the strict, and then sticking with that 3 to 5 set range of 3 to 6 reps for your clapping push-up and or handstand push-up. Moving on to the lower half, we're getting into some of my favorite ones, right? Like I know I always say that, but these are genuinely some of my favorite exercises: the jumping air squat and the jumping split lunge. Now, jumping air squats, kind of self-explanatory, where you just do an air squat and then you just, as you stand, you jump as high as you possibly can. Try 3 to 6 of these, as explosive as you possibly can, and just go for maximum height. Same thing with the jumping split lunge. You're doing a split lunge, jumping as high as you can, rotating the leg, so the trail leg goes to the front, and then as you land, you go right into another lunge or split squat, and then jump, and then rotate, jump, and then rotate. Again, going for maximum height. When you're doing this, you should be thinking about driving your hands and your arms upward. That way you can get maximum height. Remember, each and every one of these reps is for max explosivity, max height, max distance, so that you can really maximize that explosive power. Moving on down the line of core, we're into our core exercises now. These don't necessarily require a ton of explosive strength, but they are challenging enough to where most of the time you need to be able to do these explosively in order to get the movement done. The first one is V-ups, and the second one is plank kickbacks. So your V-up, although not necessarily an explosive movement by definition, again, it takes explosive hip power in order to have the prerequisite strength to be able to do these. Plank kickbacks. So just a quick description on plank kickbacks. One of my kind of sleeper movements that I wouldn't say that they're my favorite movement, but they're one of my sleeper movements where I like to throw these in there when I think I'm in good shape. So if I am trying to work the hip flexors, I will get into a plank position and then kick both feet up at the same time towards my hands, like I'm about to do a burpee or stand up. And then instead of doing that, keep my hands on the ground. So now my hands and feet are on the ground. And then I kick my feet back. That's one rep. Kick feet up, kick feet back. Kick feet up, kick feet back. This really works the explosive nature of the hip flexors. Now, the cool thing about this one is that you could probably do these in a little bit more larger volume, both the V-ups and the plank kickbacks. I would recommend maybe bumping this volume up like 6 to 10 reps. So, but I mean, again, if you are one of those individuals where you 3 to 6 reps is a challenging enough rep range, then stick with the 3 to 6 reps. You'll be totally fine. But some of you advanced athletes might benefit from doing anywhere between 6 to 10 reps of these exercises for your core. Last but definitely not least, now these are the buns. These are the posterior chain. These are the glutes, the hamstrings. Number 1, ice skater jumps. Number 2, jumping Bulgarian split squats. Just thinking about these makes my butt burn. Now, an ice skater jump, I freaking love ice skater jumps. These are when you basically are doing a jump to the side. So you literally jump off of one foot, explode off of one foot, jump as far as you possibly can to one side. As you land with your opposite foot, you go right into another jump towards the other side. So you jump off of your left, land on your right, jump off of your right, land on your left, so on and so forth for the required amount of reps. Now, if you stuck with that 3 to 6 rep range and you jumped as hard as you possibly can, you would be surprised at how difficult these are. These are so challenging. I freaking love these movements that I'm talking about right now. I love me some ice skater jumps. These typically are found in like your Orange Theory class or your Barry's Boot Camp class, where it's a part of a circuit. Now, these do belong in those, by the way, but they are most valuable for low repetitions and explosivity. The next one is the jumping Bulgarian split squat. This is a true strength and power exercise where you're really getting up there in the power output. You're doing a Bulgarian split squat like I described before, except now you're jumping off of that lead foot. And you're doing 3 to 6 reps on one side, 3 to 6 reps on the other. And man, these are an amazing movement to develop raw, explosive power and athletic ability. I'm a big, big fan of the jumping Bulgarian split squat. Again, 3 to 5 sets or so of 3 to 6 reps. When done as hard as you possibly can, a fantastic bun burner on the ice skaters and the jumping Bulgarian split squats. So there you have it, folks. You do not need any equipment to get a fantastic workout from start to finish. Full body workout, I would recommend, again, anywhere between 4 to 5 times per week, depending on your ability level. And yeah, it just goes to show that if you are, short on equipment or you don't have any equipment, a little creativity can go a long way. And if there's a will, there's a way. But also where, there's such a thing as bad programming and there's such a thing as bad exercises that you shouldn't really be doing, or you don't really have any business doing, or just are not that effective. I would highly recommend analyzing any program before implementing it. But yeah, give these a try. Let me know how they go. Please DM me. If you guys are on social media, by the way, and want to see what I'm up to on a daily basis, I post pretty perverted memes on a daily on my stories. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram, my handle is @Danny_Birdie. If you are on LinkedIn or Facebook, my name is Danny Birdie, and that's where you'll find me. Cue that sick-ass track by Kung Fu Vampire. I will see you next week.